Good evening and welcome to another edition of the Magpie Circle. We're joined tonight by Mark Stallard and Chloe Page. Welcome to Stell, welcome to Chloe. On the show tonight then, so 3 wins in a week, hasn't happened that often, not quite record equaling in the National League. We won 4 on the bounce last year. If you were at Dagenham, what did you make of it? Early questions I've just fired out on the message boards for your man of the match. Not an easy one. I might go for a slightly unusual player. Unusual in the sense he doesn't necessarily always get too many. I thought Nemani did very well. Started a bit higher up front, got a lot of the ball, especially in the first half. Thought he did well on Saturday. Macaulay Langstaff is the man, 9 in 7. We have got another player. I'm just sorting that out with the club at the minute. 1-on-1 into our Magpie Circle Star Chamber. Who would you like to hear from? 1-on-1. And I'll tell you who it is later on in the programme. It's a good one. Bromley at home on Saturday. Let's see how we get on against them. That won't be easy. All 3 of us were fortunate enough to be at Dagenham. Welcome to Stell. Good evening, Stell.
Evening, Paul.
And a welcome, of course, to Chloe. How are you, Chloe? Try it again, Chloe.
Oh, there we go. We're doing it. We're both doing it. Yeah. I'm very well, Paul. Thank you. How are you?
Yes, very good. Did you enjoy your pie, mash, and liquor?
Yeah, it was lovely. A great start to a great day, really.
Yeah, it was a good day all round. Stell, where were you? I'd have bought it for you, even though it's now gone up to the extortionate price of £4.50.
£4.50. Well, that's going to be dirt cheap, I think, by the price of everything after Christmas, isn't it? The way they're talking. So, yeah, we'll have to take you up on that another week.
Yes, absolutely. There were quite a few of our flock were in there. Actually, quite a few Notts fans and quite a few messaged me, and hopefully everyone enjoyed it. The damn things are such big portions, Stell. I don't think Chloe had ever heard of what this was. But for dessert, not that I could manage it, or Chloe's granddad, spotted dick with custard. You don't see that around very often now, do you?
Probably just as well. Probably just as well.
And a huge apple pie and ice cream. I saw one Notts fan from our flock devouring after 2 pies and 4 scoops of mash. Let's get a few comments from us all. David Shorter, glad you got your pie and mash, Paul. David goes on, another great performance. Question now is, can it be maintained throughout the season? Because that's what's needed for top spot. Glad we're thinking positively and not just the playoffs. Karen Knight, hello everyone. David Shorter again. Langstaff MOM for me. Also thought Palmer had a great game. Richard Hawksworth, saw you on Saturday, Richard. Glad you got your pie and mash. First off on Saturday was the best performance I have seen from us in the National League. Interesting. Anyone else think that was the best we've seen? I can think of maybe one other game. Duncan Connery, evening all. Why do we not have our own commentator anymore? Shane Walker, evening from a warm but cloudy Leon Solent. Hope it's all okay in Leon Solent for you, Shane. Paul Huskerson, evening all. Dale Pikett going one better here. Afternoon, everyone, from a sunny Cancun. Now, and also, you're not the only one in Mexico, Dale. Will Gresley and his lad Liam, who plays for my son's Sunday morning team, Mapley United, they're out in Mexico as well at the moment. Wayne Wilkins, I'm still waiting for the fans who guaranteed me and the rest of social media that we will be poor like we were apparently from the first 3 matches. M4, first time I've genuinely believed we can win the league in a while. Don't want to get carried away though. Joy Lancaster, that's a new poster. My favourite moment of the match was Slocum casually passing over McCallum's head with the outside of his boot. Stell, okay. Critique of Saturday. One of the guys are there saying the best 45 he's seen in the National League. Where would you put that in the grand scheme of things?
I would put it right up there, and it's a strange one, strange feeling. I was thinking about it today after obviously following the game. The first half, I thought we were excellent, unbelievable, really good. played that. Talk about levels in sport all the time, and we were levels ahead of Dagenham and Redbridge. And I've seen the goals today, the highlights that the club have put out, of the game. And it did reaffirm the fact that Dagenham were absolutely woeful as well. But again, it's which way you look at that. It's two sides of the same coin, pretty much. Notts were excellent. Notts dominated the possession. They followed on from the Solihull performance, which I said was as good in 90 minutes from Notts as I've seen while we've been in the National League. I know the scoreline wasn't, 4, 5 or 6. But I think in terms of domination of a good opponent, I think that's probably as good as we've seen on the Bank Holiday Monday. Could they carry it on? Well, absolutely. They continued in that vein against a Dagenham team that were unbeaten at home prior to the game. But Dagenham are one of them teams that you catch them on one day and they can look brilliant. Catch them on a bad day and they can look ropey. And the first half Saturday, Notts were excellent. Make no bones about it. Notts were excellent first half. They got their 3 goals. It was one-way traffic. If it was a boxing match, it'd have been stopped at half time. But there's a few Dagenham players who didn't seem to want to get a sweat on. And the biggest difference between the two teams for me, other than the quality and the finishing that Notts had and the chances that they created, it was the work rate and the desire that Notts players have shown out of possession of the ball to go and get the ball back, high up the pitch, in the middle of the park, not allowing the opposition time on the ball. I thought it was excellent the first half. Second half was, a little bit of cruise control almost, still dominating the game, still by far the better team, add another couple of goals to it. But I don't think they really needed to get out of second gear in the second half because the hard work was done in the first half. They were excellent.
Very good, Stell. Chloe, what was your take on it all?
I mean, we're just going to be saying the same things, really, aren't we? Like Stell says, incredible that first half. We really came out of the traps. We've obviously got our striker scoring. 9 and 7 is incredible, and he's just going to keep adding to the target. Great to see his first hat trick as well. You could tell how much it meant to him. Goals wise, they're not the best you're ever going to see. Some might say National League level goals, but if we scored 5 like that every week, I'm not bothered. We don't need to score from the halfway line. Tap-ins will do me all season long, but it was just the performance. Is possibly the best that I've seen. I'm sure there'll be another couple of games up there, but for me, I didn't get to the Solihull game. So it was just hearing from people that did go and their opinions. And obviously my granddad had basically said that was the best 90 minutes of football he's seen in a long time from Notts. And we talk about maybe a slower starting performance in weeks gone by. Obviously great results, but a few complaints about performances here and there. And that's just kind of been wiped and we've got it together. From what I've seen, especially at the Dagenham game, but they're not a team that you roll over like that very often at all. And obviously they push playoffs nearly every season. And I think if you'd have said we'll beat Solihull and Dagenham away, we'd have absolutely slapped your hand off. We've got a couple of fixtures coming up now, especially the home games that you'd like to see this winning streak go on. But we'll see how long that lasts, but it's all going well, and I'm glad to see they've got that performance click back in with the results, which is great. 5's always nice, especially away from home. But we talk about how good the first half was. Obviously, we started the second half a little bit quieter, and me, you, and my granddad Paul, we were having that conversation at half time. Well, is he going to finish the 3? However many more we're going to have, and it started off a little bit slower, but we keep scoring, and that's all you can ask for. We didn't sit back. Obviously Dagenham weren't great, and some of the defending is shocking. If that was Notts, I wouldn't be best pleased about it after the 90 minutes. But like I say, they're not a team to be rolled over, and you don't know what team's going to show up on the day. But we didn't let them play. As poor as they were, a slice of that is down to us, which is also great. It's also nice to keep a clean sheet. I think after the 3rd and 4th, that's kind of what I was looking for then, to keep that clean sheet. But we went carried on, scored another couple of goals, and it was a lovely day. And then obviously Chickson 2 and 2. Who would have thought? When I looked, I was down south in Cornwall on Monday. And he was probably, apart from Slocum, maybe the last person that I would have ever have said would get us a goal. And now he's 2-2. And it's interesting to listen to the manager. I'd love to know what this little thing that they've got going on, how many goals is he going to get this season? He clearly wants him to push up, which is great. We all know Chuckson can be a little bit more negative just because he's not a wing back, but he's obviously learning a different position. Obviously, he played it last year, so he's getting used to it now. He's getting in the box, getting further up the pitch, and we'll see what else he can do this season.
Very good, Chloe. Coming in. Just mute Chloe. I'm a couple of feedback. Rich Hawksworth agrees, Stel. We have aggression and work rate that we didn't have last season. We're also prepared to be more direct, and we are getting the ball forward a lot earlier as a result. Mfol says, best thing about Saturday was how we played out of possession. Chris B, no, not a JOB fan, but he had a good game on Saturday. Would still get Basharami in against Bromley, as I think we need his height and physicality against them. Rich Hawksworth, Nemani looks a real threat when we can deliver the ball to him early and wide. Jurgen Halligan says, Macaulay will get 30 at least at this rate. Dylan Room, I can't remember whose interview it was, who said we're so much fitter than we were last season. I think it was Palmer. We'll talk generically about style of play in a minute, Stel. A strikers union and all that. And Chloe was talking about, they're not necessarily 35-yard worldies. But we were at the end where not scored the goals, obviously, in the first half. And I was very close, right behind the goal. And I did think it was quite interesting that Langstaff, when that ball for his first goal, the ball has come loose. He's got his back to goal, right? And the ball's kind of in the middle of a goalkeeper, him, another defender. And on the face of it, there's not a great deal on. But his reaction time, his swivel, and just to get a shot on the target that scraped under the goalkeeper's hand, I'm not sure there's too many other players we've got just with that little set of skills to be able to score. Fox in the box, striker's instinct. Is that something you noticed? Clearly it was something you would have scored in your pomp, but it didn't look much, but it requires, for me, great finishing ability to be able to get the shot off and score from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, strikers union or what, but I'm long since been an advocate of they're the sort of goals. They're the goals that get you up the table. We saw last season particularly, I think, and it may have been the season before as well, a number of goal of the season contenders. Just wonderful moves, and the season before, wasn't it? We had half a dozen at least candidates, shots from outside the box, and they're great. Of course, we want to see the fantastic goals, but the bread and butter, if you want to win things, if you want to be top of the tree, win the league, we've said over the last few years, we need somebody who can score ugly goals, a goal getter, Fox in the box, whatever, like you say, whatever you want to call it. For me, it's just an innate finisher. It's a good striker. Good strikers score quantity of goals. It's not about the quality of goals. All goals are worth the same. All goals count equally. So that's why, and Macaulay came up and did his post-match and, congratulated him, said, well done. And he said, a bit of an ugly one, innit? But said, they're great. They're great. They're my sort of goals there because they count just the same. But it's somebody who's in, and I can't overemphasize it. You will get the ball in the 6-yard box, in the opposition 6-yard box. And I've sounded like a broken record, I think, last year. At times, we got the ball in areas and just, how many times do we say we just need somebody with a killer instinct, bit of ruthless finishing? Well, it looks like we've got players that can do that bit this season. I'm sure we'll score a few worldies as well, as we've scored one or two decent ones already. But when you put the ball in the box, which Notts play, they like to get the wing backs high. You said we'll come on to how Notts are playing, but they're going to get the ball into areas. They're going to dominate possession. And when you put the ball in the opponent's box, let's face it, the basics, the fundamentals of football is score more than the opponents. Keep it out at one end, put it in at the other. And I think we've got in Macaulay Langstaff, Kedwin Scott, we've got natural goal-scoring strikers who've got that sixth sense, that innate ability, that just unfathomable skill of being in the right place at the right time, whether that's 1 yard, 2 yards out in the 6-yard box, and they're looking to get their shots off. That first goal that you mentioned, Paul, exactly that. That striker's instinct, and I think Macaulay said it in his post-match interview. He could have back to goal. He could have set it back to an oncoming midfield player. But you're a striker. You're 6-7 yards out. You want to turn and get a shot away. And yeah, it doesn't need to be hit hard. The keeper's got no time to react. He gets a hand on it, doesn't save it. So that's what strikers want to do. You want to pull the trigger. You've got to pull the trigger. He's missed. He's got 9 goals already in 7, but he's missed chances already this season, and he'll carry on missing chances, hopefully, because that means he goes in at the right places, and that supply line is there as well. You know, lads are creating for him as well, which I'm sure he'll be the first to mention. So, you know, yeah, scruffy goals. You know, they're not going to win goal of the season, but to me, as a striker or ex-striker, I love them. I absolutely love them, because that's where you get your quantity of goals. Never mind your quality. Yeah, we'd all like a few pearlers out the top drawer to put some icing on the cake. But that's where you need to get your if you want to get over 20 a season, and let's face it, it's nearly halfway there. If you want to get over 20 a season, you've got to get your fair share of them in the 6-yard box.
Chloe, as Chris B points out, both of Cedwyn Scott's goals would suggest he may also have that knack too. 2 in 3 games for him, both close range efforts right inside the box. What do we think of Cedwyn? Clearly, Macaulay's getting all the headlines, but as a striking pair, seems pretty good at the minute.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly what you just said. They're a striking pair. They work together. They both feed each other in. And I thought his first goal, I never, ever thought when the ball came to him, he's going to squeeze that in at the back post. And as soon as it even fell to him, I still thought, this is just going straight out. And I was shocked. Like you say, we were sat right behind the goal, and how he squeezed that in. I know he's got no one next to him, but it is a really tight angle. And we talk about these goals, like you say, tap-ins. You've got to be there. That's what we've got, especially in Langstaff. A bit of a fox in the box. Like, we all keep comparing him to Husey, and I think he might be that kind of player that we have been missing. It's just always in the box, always at in the right space. It's exactly what we need, I think. Like you say, just get them numbers up, tap them in. But sometimes these goals are just as rewarding, like Stal says, as the screamers and the free kicks that go top drawer. But because they're team goals, a lot of them, and we've played some great football already this season, not just including Dagenham, but bringing other players into it. They'll get a kick out of it as much as Macaulay will up front and Scott will. But we've seemed to have a system now that's got these two in, they're playing already, and they're scoring. And they slotted in great, as we kind of expected. This is kind of what you should get if you're going to sign a pairing together that scored together over 50 goals in the National League North last season. So it's incredible that they've been able to step up this quickly. I think we were all a bit maybe worried is quite harsh, but at the start of the season when it was all a bit up in the air about Scott, is he fit? Is he not? Does the manager want to play him? Does he not? Well, he clearly does. We all know that. We could have all told you that. And we finally got him match fit. He's getting minutes under his belt, and it's great to see. But we've even got other players scoring. Like we keep saying, Chickson, obviously Mitchell's doing well off the bench. But yeah, it's great. And this is what we want. I think last season we're relying on certain players to score every week and to kind of get us out of games that maybe we could have lost or were drawing, and they've kind of won it with a bit of magic. We've got players from all over the pitch now scoring and contributing. And like Stel says, it's all about the quantity. We can score the rest of the goals for all of the year like that for all I care. I know we love to see a screamer, but if you hand me over a 1-0 every week, some tapping at the back post and we win the league, then happy days, I'm not bothered. But yeah, it's great. And I love a team goal, like we say. So it's nice to see that everyone's involved and we're not just relying on Langstaff and Scott. Everyone else is contributing to the goals as well, which is great.
Scott was outstanding in the first half. Great touch and awareness and physicality. Enfol says Scott links the play brilliantly. Dylan Room, it was great to see against Solihull. They put 2 men on Langstaff, which freed Chicks for his back post finish. Andy Easom, Cedwyn is the perfect foil for Macca. Defences don't know which way to turn against us at the minute. David Shorter, Langstaff and Scott are both doing the business when it comes to talking. Stel, okay. we've not got to that magical 10-game mark yet, where you kind of deliver the considered verdict. But 7 games in. And I think not all of us were totally convinced, you included, would we play 2 up top this season? Yeah, or would it again be 1 up front? How much do you think playing 2 up front is shaping recent results? And is that a formation you would feel more comfortable with when you're chasing a top spot or playoffs? Because for 3 years, basically, 3 years in the first 2 or 3 games of this season, we have very predominantly played with 1 up front.
Yeah, I mean, look, I always say there's never one size fits all. Me personally, yeah, as an ex-striker, again, used to play in pairs, would always prefer that. Would always prefer having a strike partner up there, because I just think it occupies defenders. But, the game's changed. Excuse me, the game has changed, and it moves on a little bit. So you see more players that are willing to play the number 10 role, or the little floating roles, or the inverted winger roles. Let's not forget, at the start of this, or before the season, we had Cal Roberts in the building as well before he went. And I think the fact of him going has obviously shaped a little bit as well, because had Cal been here, then who knows, after 7 games, we may not be sitting here saying, well, we've been playing a front 2 all the while with Ruben, Cal, Macaulay Langstaff, Kedwin Scott not being fit for the first few games. So the team could have easily evolved in a different direction. But that's the beauty of modern football now. You're not a one-trick pony. You're not a one-size-fits-all team and squad. You have to have players that can back up those. I mean, you look at, we said it last season with Kyle Wootton. If he gets injured, we didn't have a really out-and-out replacement for him. And I barely even dare say it, but I'm touching wood while I do. You look at the start we've had, if Macaulay gets injured, have we got replacements in the building? I'd still like to see maybe another addition at that end of the pitch, to cover for injuries. And I'm sure Luke Williams is well aware of that and will be looking. And with the transfer deadline in the Football League going this past week, then there may be a few players become available, that obviously can't go anywhere in the league, but can now go somewhere in the Vanarama, in the National League. So that may be something he's looking at. But I mean, yeah, it's been a fantastic start. Just to be a little bit of a, be the sort of word of caution, we've had exactly the same start as we had first 7 games last season. Exactly the same, 4 wins, 3 draws. But what followed last season were 3 consecutive defeats.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's been a great start. They're playing some unbelievable football, particularly in these last 2 games, and the signs are promising, really promising. But again, the season is a long time. They've got to keep it going, and they've just got to look at it one game at a time. The old cliche, but not get carried away with everything too much. That's our job. We can do that.
Interesting point, actually, from Stallard. And Jurgen had mentioned this, I think, in the chat a little bit earlier, to say same number of points, similar record, Chloe. What's your take? What's your take as to where we are now? Someone just spoke about kind of the top 4 could well be the top 4 at the end of the season. It's certainly 4 of the bigger clubs, the more established clubs. Where are you with everything at the moment?
It's always a difficult one with it being the National League, really. I mean, you see what happened to Stockport. They went on a terrible run, and Wrexham really had a tough start to the season. Took them a while to get going. Obviously, Stockport sacked their manager, but you can see at any point, any one team can get a few results together, and they fly up the table. Similarly, you can go the other way, like Stel says. You kind of take 3 defeats on the bounce and you drop right down, especially at this time in the season when points are really few and far between, because everyone's got similar results. Like you say, a couple of wins and a couple of losses at the top of the table can absolutely flip things. So it's hard when to say a good mark is obviously 10 games, and then we'll have a direct comparison with last season's, adding them 3 losses in. But Christmas is always a good mark as well. But you can go on forever more about results and when's the best time to kind of kickstart. But all we want is points on the board at the minute. And as long as that carries on, my mentality is kind of win your home games, draw you away. And that's what we've pretty much done. Obviously, with a swap between the Chesterfield and the Halifax game, that's essentially what we've done so far. The best part for me is obviously we're unbeaten still. There's not many teams from top to bottom that have done that, from the Premier League all the way down to the National League. I think we're one of 7 now, which is always nice to hear. And it's not as if those have all been draws either. You can talk about being unbeaten, but if you've got 7 draws, I don't think we'd be as happy as we are today. But it's interesting. It's always interesting how we're going to bounce back after a loss. We haven't got one yet. It's bound to come. We're not going to go all season unbeaten, and it'll be incredible if we do. And I think we'd all be hailing the manager if we do it by the end of the season. But it's going to be that bounce back. We obviously struggled after the 3 last season, but it's interesting. Just keep winning the games, and we've got a nice run of games coming. But we all say that there's always one of the games where it's like, well, we should have won that, or how have they beat us kind of mentality. But we're all in the same league. We all belong here, essentially. You would have thought, we said at the end of the game, it's interesting now that the top 4 is kind of who everybody expected, but there's a long way to go. But there's always an underdog as well that kind of comes flying out of nowhere, especially near the end of the season. So it's interesting to see if there will be one of them, or whether that's it for this season. We're going to have something different, and we are going to have the expected top 4 fight it out for the rest of the season.
The most salient question of the evening, Chloe. This has been asked before, but I forgot to read it out and ask you. From James Ford. What's happened to Chloe's black and white striped wallpaper?
So it's probably almost 10 years old, and it wasn't lasting very well. There was rips and all sorts in it, and I think we spoke about it before when I actually bought it from, I think it was Wilco's, that it was the last roll. So 10 years ago, I don't think I'd be able to get any more now. So it was on its last leg. So we've stripped it off and gone back to basics and just gone back to white. But hopefully get my shirt back up at some point.
Okay, well, there you go. Chloe's wallpaper, James, is answered. Andy Easom, Hughesy is the special guest this weekend. I was going to come on to that. Be interested to know his thoughts on our game at the moment in particular, and our deadly duo up top. We're hoping to have Leon next week, actually, when he's seen the game against Bromley. Chris B, last season at this time, we'd lost Slocum, Cameron and Rawlinson, I think, to injury before those 3 losses. To the room, 3 consecutive defeats was the loss of Kyle Cameron, wasn't it? And we didn't have a replacement for him then. I feel like we have that now. Jurgen Halligan, looking forward to seeing Hughesy in hospitality. Stel, we focused a little bit on 2 up top. So put more generally, how do you think we are different in the way we are approaching the game and tactics this season compared to last?
Well, I said right at the start of the season, and from seeing it, it's not night and day difference, but there are certainly differences. 2 things I've noticed particularly is the closing down out of possession in the opponent's half. I wouldn't necessarily call it a high press, but they're pressing higher up the pitch, definitely. And definitely this seems, whether consciously or subconsciously, there is a definite effort to go and win the ball back higher up the pitch and quicker than we were last season. At times, last season, it was a case of keep yourself organised, stay behind the ball and not allow space in behind. Another thing I've noticed is we are keeping a lot higher defensive line as well, which some people say, that's the modern game. You see that in the Premier League nowadays as well. There were times on Saturday against Dagenham that the defenders virtually on the halfway line, when we're pressing, we're in their half. And that ultimately resulted in long, aimless balls going over the top and, harmless. Your keeper's on the edge of his box. He's the sweeper keeper. Now, it can be dangerous, obviously, because if you play against somebody with pace or somebody who runs from deep and can time a run, and there isn't enough pressure on the ball, then a pass can be played and you could be made to look a bit foolish with it. But it looks like a definite plan. That the idea is, and I love to all Sky's wizardry and all that thing to illustrate this.
It's a bit beyond the Magpie circle budget.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. But it condenses the play the line between the defenders and your strikers with your midfielders and the wing backs and everybody in between, it condenses the play. So nobody has too far to run and nobody's running individually or getting picked off in ones and twos, which ironically Dagenham found themselves being done to on Saturday in the first half particularly. They didn't know whether they were coming or going, closing down half-heartedly but in ones and twos and not just playing around them. So they're the two biggest differences I've seen. I think maybe, slightly different is things, still playing a back three, whereas last season it was more about getting Bromley and Kyle Cameron stepping out with the ball, the two wider of the three centre halves coming out with the ball. Whereas more often this season, it's Aidan Baldwin, who is the man stepping through with the middle, running through the lines with the middle, in the middle of the three, and the other two sort of cover around. Matty Palmer can sit in an occasion, but look, it's a really fluid style of football. It's not, it's no revolution to what's done, but like anything, when you do something well and everybody looks like they're on board with it and knows their roles, knows their jobs, which has particularly been the case in the last 2 or 3 games, the Halifax game first up. But, to go back to the Gateshead and the Chesterfield game, we weren't singing so many praises about it then. But again, it's got to have time to evolve, to fit in. And like any system, it needs the component parts, i.e. the players, to do their roles and be better than their opponent and help your teammates out. And that's exactly what we've had in the last 3 games. And hopefully that's just a sign of a bit of momentum, a bit building, because I think they've been fantastic. And the way they've played, particularly these last 2 games, you get the feeling that something special could be building this season.
Dale Pikett says we're a lot faster getting it forward than 50 side-to-side passes before it goes forward. Shane Walker talking about technology, cuckoo clock, the ghost of Les's cuckoo clock. That's about the limit of our technology. Chloe, so Stell's, if you like, as the ex-player, comparing and contrasting on the pitch. As a fan, are you enjoying what we're seeing more this season compared to last or not? There was almost, if you like, a deification is a big word for you, of the way we played under Ian. There were some critics, but there were some people who would be talking about it, the best free-flowing football they've seen in decades and all the rest. What about your enjoyment this season so far, albeit a small sample, compared to last?
Enjoyment's difficult. I think we had some great games last season, but I thought we were always open to conceding, always, every single game. Like you say, it was great football to watch. We had a couple of key star players, if you will, and those were the players that were getting you off your seat week in, week out. But I think this season, you could say it was more total football. Last season, the complaints were maybe midfield isn't as solid because obviously we had the 3 star players, if you will, in Roberts, Rodrigues and Wootton. And that maybe meant that we were struggling a little bit in midfield, coming a bit short. I know there's a couple of complaints in defence as well. But I think if you wanted to tie up loose ends from last season and kind of put them into that's what we've got this season. You're not going to have the kind of this free-flowing as much as you were last season if you're going to play the style of football we are this. Like Stav says, it's very similar in the actual formation other than the playing 2 up top. We've got kind of not out-and-out wing-backs as such, players like Naman and Chickson, who that wouldn't be their starting position if they were to choose, possibly. Obviously, Chickson's had most of his season playing that role now. But with Naman, you've got people like Taylor sat on the bench or not even in the squad at all, that some people might think, well, possibly that might be better defensively. But I think if you were to make up a combination of the good parts of last season and what we needed to improve on, I think that's what we've got this season. And like I said earlier, it's from the front to the back of the team, which is more exciting for me. It's not all of these worldies, which is, like you say, are great to see. It's the team effort. Like you say, it starts from the back. Even Slocum, he's had a lot of stick. He's playing well. He's growing into the role. But I think it's kind of maybe a little bit expected, kind of how it's gone, that we've stuck to something similar to last season, because Luke Williams in his first press conference was like, it's great what Birchnell has built from last season. It's kind of something that I like to do myself, the style of football, the formation. So it's nice that we have built from that. And I think personally, we've got a more total football now. I feel a lot more calmer in and out of possession. Especially we've got teams less hitting us on the break, in my opinion, because we've not got the whole team forward. I think total football is how I describe the 7 games so far. Obviously, there's a long way to go, and this might slip up. It might look good now, and then we get caught out, and that's that, and we have to swap and change it. But like we were saying earlier, this formation isn't set in stone. We've got options. We've obviously got Mitchell to come off the bench if it's not working, which is totally different to Langstaff and Scott. A lot, obviously, in physicality-wise. But it's interesting because last season we still had Mitchell, but the other choice was Wootton, and it's kind of like very similar players, especially in terms of build. So it'd kind of be, if we wanted to change it last season, he'd either come out on the wing or Wootton to come off in replacement of Mitchell, and it kind of seemed just a repeat of what plan A was, and there was no plan B. But this season, I just feel more comfortable looking on the bench. We talk about Jim O'Brien a lot. I personally think he's had a great start to the season. Not as expected. A lot of people didn't expect him to start as many games, and I've heard Bajrami had a really good game, and people were shocked that he was dropped against Solihull. But it just shows you that people are there to step up this season, and they have all bought into, so far anyway, what Luke Williams wants them to do, and they're clearly listening. And like Stal says, they all know their roles, and it's going well. So for me, I'm enjoying this season for the total football. I'm not as nervous in games. But yeah, it's difficult to compare because we've had some great games last season, but definitely calmer and hopefully a few more clean sheets.
Very good. Chris B, I feel calmer too. We're still nervous at 3-0 on Saturday, as we are still not. Andy Eastham, Tin and Brooks had a debut not to remember at Hednesford. Yeah, he's over there at the minute. 3-1 FA Cup defeat to Long Eaton United. I didn't spot that one. David Short, here's a question I was going to ask you, Stel. Clearly, Macaulay Langstaff is kind of now, the most talked about player at Meadow Lane. I think it's fair to say so far this season. David Shorter says, what's your thoughts on Ruben playing slightly deeper and hugging the left side of the pitch? Would you say we are a little less reliant on Ruben? And would you say, Stel, that kind of Ruben is now being asked to fit into the team, rather than there could have been a point that under Ian, a lot of the tactics or the setting up was largely moulded around Ruben, because clearly Neil Ardley was in a position where he felt he couldn't accommodate Ruben in the team, and he does have quite a specialised role. I mean, just talk to me a bit about Ruben and where you think we are.
Well, firstly, I like the fact that Ruben isn't grabbing all the headlines this season, other than speculation about whether he's still going to be here after the transfer deadline, because that means other players are stepping up. Ruben is a quality player who is playing well. Let's make no bones about it. And I think Dave made a good point after the post-match when he asked Luke Williams. We've seen players before after the deadline, bit of speculation that, they don't get, I'm not saying the move that they wanted, because if he wanted a move, he may well have been gone. But you've seen players sulk. And all I saw on Saturday was Ruben Rodrigues working as hard as he has done for the team as he at any point this season, which is exactly what he's done. How do I think he's playing? I think he's playing really well. I don't necessarily see him hugging the left-hand side, as somebody said. I think he's playing sort of wherever he wants to go to, and he wants to be that link between front and back. And if he can find a space, then okay, sometimes your right-footed players naturally drift to the left-hand side more anyway. But I think Ruben's been quietly excellent so far this season. And we're only talking 7 games, and he missed one of them through illness. So he's been quietly excellent. He works hard. We know he's got quality and he's a vital cog. But the fact that he isn't grabbing headlines is great because, A, it might mean there's a little bit more to come from him because I'm sure he'll want to grab the headlines. But also it means we've got Macaulay Langstaff scoring goals that only Erling Haaland can match at this moment in time. So, that's what you want to see. You don't want to see a team revolve around one player all the time. You need every cog, every piece of the jigsaw has got to pull its weight, if you like. So there's Adam Chickson, who doesn't, necessarily get the headlines, but with a couple of goals, but with ultra consistent performances. Aaron Neman on Saturday, excellent. Thought he was his best game on that right side for Notts. Put some great balls in. And Matty Palmer, last year's player of the season, just doing what Matty Palmer does. Just keeps everything ticking. Never gives a bad ball hardly. Always in the right place going forward and defensively as well. He's the epitome of what you want in that midfield role. We've got Bajrami when he came in against Solihull was excellent. Jim O'Brien came in against Dagenham and Redbridge. He was excellent there. And you almost want to sort of get people together. There's no need for a division of, I prefer him, I prefer him. Yes, you can have a preference, but that doesn't mean the other person is bad. Don't be anti-Jim O'Brien or anti-Bajrami if you prefer the other player. They're all Notts. We've got to all get behind him because I tell you, 7 games in, which is not a season, it's not a fraction of a season, of course, it wins you nothing after 7 games. But I've said it before, I said it Saturday, I just feel the way they're going, that something special could be building. And what you don't want is division. You want everybody to get together, get on a crest of a wave, because as Chloe mentioned about this unbeaten run at the start of a season, the longer you can keep that going, the message that sends to the rest of the league is fantastic, because teams suddenly start going, well, we ain't going to get out of Notts, so we might just go a little bit defensive. We might park the bus. So automatically you blunt their desire, if you like, their determination of what they can achieve, what they can get. So it's all bubbling up nicely. Very early days, of course, very early days, but the early signs are promising.
Enfol says Ruben has still been brilliant, just not quite got the goal return he enjoyed last year. Chris B, don't forget Sam Austin, he's been excellent too. Chloe, as you know, all I've ever bang on about is results. 3 wins in a week and everything in the garden is rosy. And Stell kind of alluded to this. You have these quite ridiculous trial by social media and people voicing their opinions. At the minute, you've got a load of Forest fans calling for Steve Cooper to get the sack because he's tactically inadequate, apparently, after Saturday. And we were talking about this as well on Saturday. The team sheet comes out. Bajrami's had a fantastic game against Solihull. Jim O'Brien's in, and then all these sorts of people wade in. We all have an opinion. We all get carried away. But it just shows you get a result. Everyone's happy at the end of the day. When 2 hours earlier they're ready to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get this all season because we've got that depth now. Like Stal says, everyone's going to have their opinions. Everybody's going to prefer one person over the other. And that will change after everybody you speak to, which is actually the best part, which to me means you've got squad depth. If everybody agrees that this player is better than that player in that position, you haven't got any competition. If you've got kind of difference of opinions between fans, between ex-players, between commentators, that's kind of what you want, if you ask me. It gives us something to talk about. It'd be a bit boring if every week we said, that's our 11 and that's that. We know he's going to come off the bench and it becomes predictable. But yeah, it's interesting that obviously, like, I wasn't there, but everybody raved on about how good Bajrami was and possibly could have got man of the match, and deservedly so, and then gets dropped. But again, nobody would have even questioned that at full time. Obviously, you're going to before the game. The team sheet's always a talking point. But yeah, and after an hour, you forget about the team sheet and who started. And unless you're 3-0 down at half time, then you're kind of looking at the manager going, what are you doing? Look how well he played. But this to me just shows we've got rotation already. We're 7 games in. We've not got any injuries, but we're still rotating and everyone's playing as well as each other. There's obviously a lot of competition. And Jim was ready to step back in and had an excellent game. I think going back to Ruben, I think it's probably his kind of position, or at least his third of the pitch, that's changed the most this season. So he's obviously also going to be still adapting. at least we've got the same backbone as last season, but he's now gone from having just Wootton in front of him, and sometimes he even played alongside Wootton last season, or certainly at least further forward. He's now got to adapt to playing a little bit further back sometimes. But like we say, he's had some great performances, but obviously quieter in terms of goals. But we've got other people stepping up, so we're not missing out on goals. Obviously, it'd be great if everybody was scoring, but he's still kind of earning his keep in the team. But yeah, he's got to adapt. Obviously, with Cal going, that's another player that you played alongside of last season. It's his third of the pitch that for me has changed the most. But yeah, we'll see what he can do, and we know the quality that he's got. But there's no qualms. He's not doing anything wrong essentially at the minute. Like I just said, he's earning his keep. He's earning his name on the team sheet. He's keeping his head up and hopefully his head down in training. And as long as he's happy, he seems it. It'll all click into places if it's not doing that already. And if he isn't coming up with as many goals last season, possibly that's because we're playing with the two up front, and we might even score more goals that way. And he's still making contributions towards the game and our performances and even towards our goals. So I don't think it's a massive topic of conversation. It's just a little bit different to last season. He's not changed as a player. He's just adapting to a new role. So yeah, it is interesting, but I'm sure we'll carry it on. We've got a tough game coming up on Saturday on TV again. So hopefully a win on TV and then keep this squad rotation rolling, and no qualms at full time about who was on the pitch and who wasn't.
So we're operating on a slightly smaller squad than last season. And I think, as Dylan Ruben said, touch wood, find something. Injury-wise, Connell's been out, but we've not been too bad so far. We got past the transfer deadline from a Football League perspective in the week, so it would appear now Ruben ain't going anywhere, and now goes into the final year of his contract. That's a bridge to cross later in the season, depending where we are and where he wants to be. Do you think we need to strengthen at the minute? Is now a time when a manager would be saying, actually, I want to strengthen and bring one or two in while we're doing well? Or do you keep it as it is, don't change a winning squad formula? If an injury or two comes along, then you move into the market.
No, I think we need to strengthen. And I always think you strengthen when you're strong, because that's how you attract players. If you're mid-table mediocrity, losing, the players that you might want might have less inclination to come to you because they're having a look at you and going, well, why would I want to go there? They're not winning. They're not doing so well. When you're strong, that's when the ball's in your court. The cards are stacked in your favour. Now, I'm not saying go out this week. We need something immediately today, tomorrow, the next day. But I do think, and it's been noticeable when you look at the match day programmes, the list of the squads that Notts have had compared to the opponents, our squad is considerably lower in numbers than the opposition has been. So I do think it needs fleshing out. I think the reason as well for adding, and it's not adding to say I want to take him out of the team, he's not done well enough. It's adding numbers because I want players to come in and work with Luke Williams for a week, 2 weeks before they get their go in the team, if you like, so they know what he wants from them. It's sort of coming back into football. You see some of the top teams doing it, signing players. Man U have paid however much for that Casemiro, and he's been having to wait on the bench. He's 30 years of age, played at Real Madrid, won everything there is to go, but he's got to wait his turn and do what Ten Hag wants. Well, I'm still a believer in that. You've got to, be able to come in. Now, good players obviously can come in and do what they needed to do, but there's a certain way. And I just think when you're strong, that is when the ball is in your court to go and get some players, to attract some players that, if there was a 50-50 call, they maybe wouldn't go to mid-table in the National League, but would they come to a big team who's up near the top and fly in and look like they're going places? Then you might get one or two more players, which i.e. means a better quality of player. And again, not just any old player, not just any player for the sake of signing players, for the sake of bulking up the squad. It's got to be the right player. It's got to be a player that can come in and play. And the one thing I would also say is, when you look at the individuals that are playing so far this season and compare and contrast to last season, I think there's a case to be saying the individual components, and I'm thinking Jaden Richardson, Cal Roberts particularly, people would say, well, they're stronger than what we've got in the team at the minute. But nobody is unhappy with how the team is performing. Nobody's unhappy with any individuals within that team. So sometimes it's, well, more often than not, it's more about the collective than the individuals within that team. So that's why, I'm not too worried about focus on Ruben this or Macaulay Langstaff. That obviously he's grabbing the headlines, of course he is, and we want him to keep going. But it's all about how is that team unit playing? Are they doing what Luke Williams wants them to do? And the last 3 games, absolutely they have done with bells on as well, and long may it continue.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point you raised, Stel, in terms of the collective contribution. I think past 18 months, we've all spoken about, we've got the best 2 players in the National League. Roberts, Keller's obviously moved on to Aberdeen. We talk about Ruben. We talk about the manager, the head coach. We've got the best this, we've got the best that. And whether the sum of the parts translated to promotion, certainly it didn't. Did we get as much out? How many players could we have named when Barrow went up? How many players could we have named when Sutton went up? Clearly they had a very strong collective. And I think it's a very good point you raised, because on the face of it, probably, if you looked at individual talent, clearly Macaulay's on fire. But I think it's a very, very good point you make. Paul Huskerson, it's not a bad thing having a small squad. Look at Forest with a slightly... You should have put that in capitals, Paul, with a slightly bigger squad. Watch out when you go into York and Dorking. If you see some maniac in leathers on a Harley Davidson, that will be Jurgen Halligan. I'll tell you one thing. I bought my ticket for Dorking. I got my train tickets. And then the ready train strike, national train strike, Chloe. So me and your granddad certainly will not be going on the train to Dorking. So probably have to drive, which I'm not exactly looking forward to. To the room, touch wood, we've had no injuries yet, absolutely. And I think that's clearly a positive for us at the minute. I'm going to come back to Stella in a minute, because there's an obvious supplementary to come when you say we need to sign. Or you think now is the right time to bring in some new players? Chloe, smaller squad, and I'll kind of not let you off the hook while Stel's thinking about it. So if you think we need to bring a player or 2 in, what departments do you think we might need? We all play Football Manager for a minute. Where do you think we may need to strengthen or add extra cover?
It's difficult. I think you might be right up front, but as easy as it is, or easier that we are playing well and we're in good form, and in hindsight it should be easier to attract better players when you're playing well and you're at the top of the league. It's maybe a little bit more difficult if they don't think they're going to get game time. Obviously we have rotated squad, specifically midfield, really. That's what we've been rotating. I think at the moment, obviously injuries, you're never going to know whether somebody's going to get injured and when they are. And you could have a squad of 18 and none of them get injured for a whole season, and great, you've won the league and with the smallest squad. But that's never going to happen. And you don't know who's going to get injured, which is the most frustrating thing. It could be someone that we've got plenty of cover for and we're absolutely fine until they come back. It's difficult because we always talk about it, especially pre-season, and who's going to come knowing they might not get game time. It's just cover, I think, at the minute. That I don't know. It is a difficult one because I think every manager that I've known that's been at Notts since I've supported them has said at the beginning of the year or the beginning of the season or whenever they've joined, it's quality over quantity, which, yeah, absolutely. But yeah, we've had some of the biggest squads in the league every time. And a lot of players get lost in that. And at the end of the season, when you see the retain list, you're like, I don't even remember that name. Like, a lot of people get lost. We've obviously got Vincent out on loan, so I think we might be okay in the midfield aspect. Whereas a lot of those, I guess, are more attacking. But then I do think we've got two holding players that in Bajrami and Palmer. Jim O'Brien can also play a holding role. It is difficult, especially if you do pick up an injury, because if you haven't got any backup, you then panic a little bit. But it must be difficult, because obviously I've never been on coming from an inside perspective. I've always been as a fan aspect. So it must be difficult, especially wages, if you know kind of what your set 11 is, or who you want to rotate in and out. It's hard to then maybe go to the owners and say, well, I want you to bring somebody else in on X amount of wages. I can't guarantee you they're going to play every week, or they're going to even be on the bench every week, but to strengthen. And then it's that gamble of, are they going to get injured, or are we going to be fine for the rest of the season and then never even make the bench? So it must be a headache as a manager, as the owners, anybody, as recruitment, as the analysts. I think possibly, if I'm going to give you a direct answer, maybe up front, we've obviously got something different in Mitchell on the bench, but just to give that extra cover, because I'm not sure whether, for argument's sake, Langstaff was out for the rest of the season with an injury like Chimanga, whether Mitchell could carry us for the rest of the season. I mean, Eli Sam did a great job once we got him going, and maybe Luke can do the same thing with Cairo. But it's interesting to think about, well, we might be able to attract the best players considering we're playing so well, but do they think we've got a space for them? So it's interesting. I'd love to know from like a player's perspective. And obviously it's great to listen to Stow, who has been there and done that, and what he thinks. So yeah, it's very interesting, but I'm happy with the squad we've got so far, but no qualms to if we want to build on that at all.
Salah brother says new keeper in. I think we got one from Leicester, although it was kind of said in his arrival statement that Sam would continue to be the number one choice. Jurgen Halligan says another physical striker for backup. Stuart says one at the back and one up front. Chris Gosling driving back from Stratford on Avon or the East End of London. Chris, listening in, belated evening, or what a fantastic week in the life of a Notts fan. Andy Esom, I think we should raid the lower leagues for the untapped talent once again. Such players will be less likely to be expectant of an immediate starting place. Shane Walker, whoever they need needs to be better than what we already have. Jurgen Halligan haven't tapped into the loan market yet, apart from the keeper. Chris Gosling, Luke said he won't bring players in for the sake of it. Cyprus Ref agreed, Chloe. Higher league club will not want to loan an up-and-coming youngster to sit on the bench, and a more experienced player won't want to warm the bench. I guess we kind of had that with Zach Brunt last season, didn't we? Coming in, got a game, and then by and large couldn't get back into the starting 11. Dale Pikett, normally if you don't play them, you have to pay full wages. That is correct. But if they play, you only pay part of the wages. So, Stel, having set this hair running, where would you be focusing?
Well, I would like to see another attacking player, possibly more of a creative player, somebody who could play wide. It's both ends of the pitch. I think, if truthfully, I think just a couple of bodies, one to create, and one who could, be another option defensively. And to sort of say what to Chloe there about players wouldn't want to come if they don't think they're going to get game time. Believe me, the ego that players have got, they'll all think they could come and play. Nobody backs themselves to go, oh, I'm not going to get in the team, actually. So they would all back. They've all got ego. They all believe in themselves. If you don't, then you're not the right player. But yeah, you go to a club and you think you can be the difference all the time. It's ego. Managers think the same. Players think the same. It's just, it is. You can't be in the game if you don't think, oh, I'm not good enough for that. I'm not going to take his place because he's better than me, or I'm not going to get a game. So I don't know any player that's had that. Generally, the ego tells you that they should always be playing, even when they've had 6 terrible games on the spin. They'll still tell you they should be playing. But Yeah, I think for me, but just both ends of the pitch. Like I say, and I'm not going to say, because he's not deserving of a place in the team. I wouldn't necessarily change. I certainly wouldn't change the starting 11 from Saturday, even if I did bring somebody in. But again, it's that thing to add numbers, just to keep everybody on their toes, to add a little bit more competition, and to give somebody that comes in to rather, I would just call it being proactive rather than reactive.
Yeah.
Let's not wait till we've got a couple of injuries. Let's not wait till we've got a suspension. Let's not wait till the worst happens. And then after, quick, who can we get at 3 days' notice? Let's see if we can get somebody in. And like I say, whether that's a permanent or whether it's, right, can we take them till Christmas? Can we take them on loan till Christmas and reassess then, see where they're going to be? But it's, and again, not just anybody, not just any player, just to bulk up the squad. Absolutely not. But I would like to see another, I'd say, a creative goal scoring Cal Roberts player. I'd just like to see if Cal Roberts has gone out of the building. I'd like to see a replacement for him. And I know Sam Austin's come in, and again, early days for him. We've seen some good things from him, but nobody can say, for all the excellent comments he's had, nobody can say, well, he's the new Cal Roberts. He may well be. He may well prove himself to be better, but and I certainly hope he does. But I'd just like to see a little bit more, because at that top end of the pitch, honestly, you have to keep everybody on their toes. You have to keep pushing. I think Cairo Mitchell's done well this season. I think nobody at the start of the season would have been saying, oh, yeah, he's a good backup, he's a good replacement, he's a good option off the bench. People would have honestly been saying, well, we still last season didn't do much, probably not good enough. We need something better. But he started this season, a different manager, looks a little bit of a different player. When he's come on, he's grabbed a couple of goals, looked a little bit different, and that's how things can change. So, it's always trying to keep the pot bubbling, trying to keep it going and improve it. Defensively, I'd like to see somebody maybe, if Richard Brindley gets injured, who's another one who we don't give much airtime to. We don't give him much, he's not a headline grabber, but by God, is he consistent, and, not necessarily playing his favoured position. He's learned to roll. The opposite of what Adam Chickson's done almost, if you like. Adam Chickson's gone from being a normal left back to playing as a left wing back and learning that role. Richard Brindley's gone the other way, from being a wing back, a full back or a wing back, to go and being a right side of a centre half. So if he gets injured, have we got much right sided cover? Yeah, I don't know. Certainly not while Connell's injured, and we don't know how long that's going to be. So, the fundamental is, I think that the squad is thin. It's okay. There's enough there, and there's enough quality there at the minute. But give a couple of injuries, then you could start saying, have we got the quality to replace them? And especially if it's key injuries as well. And again, my fundamental is, when you're strong, that's the time to strengthen.
Yeah, you kind of stole me thunder a bit there, Stel, and I would totally agree with you with your comments about defensively. If you ask me one thing, do we fundamentally have to improve on from last season to get top spot, or to stand a chance of getting top spot? Got to concede fewer goals. Got to concede fewer goals. And I think in the last 3 games, we've only conceded 1, haven't we? And defensively, I think we're all agreed, we look calmer, we look more resolute, we look more resilient. And I think, we sponsor Richard Brindley. And, there is a debate to be had as to whether he is certainly as adept at right wing back or right back if he switched to a 4 as he is in a central 3. And although Connell is injured at the minute, if you're pushing me, I would say another mean central defender, or a defender that can play in a 3 as an extra body. And the man has done very well. Said I thought he was man of the match on Saturday, but clearly he's had Joe Taylor playing out of position there. Adebayo Rolling has come off the bench, but I think he was kind of given a few words of what he needs to do to be considered as a starter. So if you're saying 1, one position, I would be saying central defence, like you've mentioned there. If it's Neil Warnock, he'd be saying, right, I'll have another 4 strikers in, please. That's what he always did. Wherever club he went to, on the bench, he used to have about 4, 5 strikers, didn't he? And not bother with a goalkeeper, just strikers. Because his view fundamentally was you can move midfielders and defenders around a bit and cover. Goal scoring, are the options I need in a game, and I need as many options in any one game as I can to score some goals.
Yeah, absolutely. Goal scorers win your games, don't they? Goals win games. See, both boxes, you've got to keep them out as well. But we don't need it to be, or we don't want it to be focused on one player, do we? Macaulay Langstaff, all about his goals, because the deeper you get into the season, of course, you want him to go through. The likelihood is there will be a dry spell somewhere along the line, and B, there's injuries potentially. He's going to become a marked man. So everybody has, and again, we're back to the collective. The collective unit is more important than any of the individual parts within that. But clearly, you have to win your individual battles in games. That is the beauty of team sport, is that you have individual battles within a team battle. And the more good players you can get on the pitch, more players winning them battles, the better. But look, I want what I'd like to strengthen all. Of course, I'd like us to sign players that good that Macaulay Langstaff's only coming off the bench. Imagine how good we'd be then. But realistically, I just think I've looked at the team and on the programme, the squad list, and I do think, for a 46-game season that we're back to this year, with obviously FA Trophy, FA Cup to come, that is a thin squad. Of course, Luke Williams and the owners and everybody, the analysts, they'll know that, and they'll have things in place, and maybe rightly so, as Chloe said. You don't just want to bring people in if you've no intention of playing them, but you want to bring players in and say, well, there's the fight. You throw the gauntlet down to whoever's in the shirt, and you throw the gauntlet down to whoever's coming in, going, well, you've got to wait your time. You've got to wait your time, and when you get your chance, you have to take it. So, look, I'd like to sign 6 new players, obviously, if they're all better than what we've got. But at the minute, the team are playing really well. But again, let's not taint our judgment on what's happened in the last week, because go back to before that, the views were a little bit different, and vice versa. And I'm not being doom monger. I don't want to sound like a doom monger, but football has a way of bringing us all back to back down to earth with a bump. And so there are this up and down. This roller coaster of a season will happen. So it's preparing yourself before the big dips happen. Prepare yourself. It's knowing what's coming and being prepared for it. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, and look, wise words as always, Stel. We only have to look over the river. It was kind of like, 6-0. Actually, that's not too bad at Man City. It's fine. And Bournemouth got spanked 9 at Liverpool. Forest 2-0 up. Everyone's happy, and it turns out. I'm not just saying that because it's right. I'm just drawing an analogy here about the perception of Forest fans and Steve Cooper and where they are. One game, 4 days later. Okay, woe is me. And let's be honest, if we had a nightmare against Bromley, we all know people would then be saying this, that, and the other. So you're quite right. Football has a habit of, it's not really evolving, is it? It's just changing from one. This pendulum swings wildly all the time.
I mean, if we have to mention Forest, I'm not advocating at all that we go out and sign 21 new players, because I think that can disrupt. They dished out more contracts than the Mafia in August, didn't they? So it's just, that's not necessarily what I'm advocating at all. But I think, a couple of quality signings, if we could get them, whether be it this week, next week, couple of weeks, whenever the time is right. But I think, and I'm sure that they're looking at that, and I'm sure that will happen.
Andy Eastham says, with Conor Rawlinson out for a period of time and Aidan possibly having to manage an Achilles problem, another number 5 would be a good idea. Midweek matches looming, so rotation ? Cyprus wrestlers believe management are proactive. We may not see any names, but sure behind the scenes work is being done for a go-to replacement for long-term injury or suspension. I'm sure you are exactly right, Cyprus. Well, I know you are. Chris B. Rawlinson looked like he was in the training video last Friday, so assumed he was on the mend. David Shorter, clean sheets win promotion. Chloe, Bromley. I think we all know what we're going to get from Bromley. It is going to be a tough physical battle. I can't remember an easy game we've had against Bromley. You know what they will bring. You know the characteristics that Andy Woodman puts into his group of players. On the telly, it's 5:20. Let's just remind everyone of that. What are you expecting Saturday?
Tough game, to be honest. I'm sure Dagenham had just beat them. Was it 3-1? I think it was Bromley that they played. 4-1. And then look at how we did against Dagenham. It's what team's going to turn up. The opposite Dagenham team could have turned up on Saturday, and we wouldn't be sat here now, kind of slagging them off a little bit. Same with Solihull as well. I don't think anybody, from what I've heard, it was kind of a one-way stream until we could get the ball in the back of the net. But I don't think that was the team that the Solihull team people expected to show up. Being Neil Ardley, he said in his interview, he was kind of, that's not what we're about. That's not the team that I kind of train every week to kind of come to Meadow Lane. And so it's difficult. It's not just how we're going to play, it's the opposition as well. It's definitely going to be a different kind of tactic possibly to what we've seen so far this season, but there's enough we've got enough people behind the scenes that have done all their research, being the manager as well. The players will have played against Bromley, kind of know what to expect maybe. But again, everything could change on the day. I'm sure we've done our homework on it. And look, we're at home. Obviously, you've got to adapt to the game, but you should go in with your own game plan. They're coming to our ground. They're travelling to Meadow Lane. Obviously, it's a big stadium again. Kind of stick with your game plan. Obviously, you've got to kind of take notes on players and who they're going to play and formations, etc. But I think there's been too many times, especially last season, where we've kind of not gone out with the intention of this is how we're going to play, and they're coming to play us essentially. But obviously, you've got to adapt. If it's not working in the game, it's not working in the game. But like you say, surely you stick to a 5-0 winning team, especially away from home, no matter who it is. And it just so happened to be Dagenham, who are generally pushing for promotion every season. And Bromley are very similar, always pushing for that playoffs as well. So it's interesting, but I'm hoping we're going to kind of stick to our game plan, have a lot of the possession, and a few more goals would be nice, and a clean sheet. Like David said, wins your promotion if you keep clean sheet every week. And as Macaulay's going, he's going to score every week, it looks like, maybe even double that. So it'll be interesting, and it's hard to say because it just depends who shows up on the day. Look, we might have the worst game we've had all season, and it kind of goes on that run of mirror what we did last season. So it's interesting, but I'd like to see us stick to a winning team, stick to how we've been playing in the last couple of games because it's worked so far.
As far as I'm concerned, Star, there's only one definite on Saturday, and that is Adam Virgo will be getting verbals from Notts fans on social media in the countdown to the game. And I'm not sure if he's actually there Saturday, but if he is, I am absolutely certain that he will be getting more verbal after his little bite back the other week.
I didn't see that. I didn't hear that.
Yeah, he had a bit of a he bit back at Notts fans for having a go at him all the time. So cue more banter. Let's put it like that ahead of Saturday. Chloe was talking about unchanged team. Don't ask me why. I don't think it'll be the same team Saturday. I just think Luke may think Bromley possess a different set of skills, to quote Liam Neeson and all that, or a specific set of skills. I think he might change it. But whatever, we know we know exactly what Bromley are going to do, and they do it very effectively, don't they?
Yeah, they do. You might be right. I mean, we wouldn't have thought he'd have changed it after Solihull, but he did. He brought Jim O'Brien back in, and that's very much, it is very much a modern thing, isn't it? You pick your team based on the threats or perceived threats or perceived weaknesses of the opposition. And
I think he'll start Bashirami. I think he'll start Bashirami Saturday.
Yeah, and that's sort of obviously the thing. You go, well, Bromley are more of a physical team, and you think the extra size maybe of Bajrami in there as sort of a holding midfield player alongside allowing Matty Palmer just to release himself a little bit more. You may well be right. It may be horses for courses in that respect. But again, I'm sure his message to the players is, like it is every game, it's go and dominate possession. And if you control the ball, you control the game. While you've got it, the opposition aren't causing you problems. Make them work, make them chase it for 90 minutes. And if it takes to the 90th minute to wear them down and tire them out and go and punish them, then so be it. But that's so much the mantra in modern football.
Okay, thank you very much. Before I forget, we did say we're getting another player lined up to come into our Star Chamber 1-on-1. And it will be Kedwin Scott. So Kedwin is going to be joining us in the next 10 days or so. We're just teeing that up with the club. I think he's quite a lively character. I've sat next to his dad for a couple of games, and he's a good old Geordie, a Newcastle United season ticket holder. So we may even get him on the show as well. I know he's listening tonight, so he doesn't know much about it yet. But anyway, okay, we've been rabbiting on for 75 minutes. Thank you very much indeed, as always, Stel. Thank you, as always, Chloe. Thank you to all of you for making the show what it is. We will be back next Monday, I think it is. Don't forget, it's a later kickoff on Saturday against Bromley, 5:20 on the telly if you can't get there. Stel, there's absolutely no reason at all, is there? Because I can't believe Mansfield and Nottingham Forest are kicking off at 5:20. That there will be any issues with people trying to find links and goodness knows what else of how to listen to you. Now, of course, I'm sure we'll all be at the game, but for those of you for geography, health reasons, whatever, old age, they will be able to get you loud and proud on a conventional BBC radio channel, correct?
Unfortunately, yes, I think so, yeah. I'm certain that is the case. Yeah, we're on the radio.
Good. We will see you and hear from you all on Saturday. Thank you very much indeed. Take care. Bye for now.